In three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL. But now we can include the World Cup. And we like to say from a bench perspective. That said, we're actually joined by a special guest again. To kind of get into it, I'm your host Ben, and I was unfortunately up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I think the guy I'm going to introduce was as well. So good to see you again, Jeremy.
Salam alaikum. I think that means peace be with you in Arabic. I looked that up. Hey,
well, there we go.
Glad to be back. And I was not so happy to be woken up at 5 a.m. by my boy, my son, but I was then overjoyed because I watched a really good soccer game. So happy to be here.
And we're gonna get into that a little bit. And as always, good to see you again as well, Rex.
Yeah, good to be back. Good to see Jeremy too. So awesome soccer. We got like a couple of days in a row of just soccer all day. It's a good time.
A quick thing I want to say: I have listened to your video, you watch your videos, listen to this podcast, and you guys have been ahead of the curve on a lot of things. Yeah, Rex. Even some of your Arsenal takes earlier in the season, I think, have already borne itself out.
Really?
I want to take that to Vegas. Because you and Ben, I think some of your Liverpool misery has been borne out as well. So you guys both been spot on your club teams and other teams. So I've been a big fan of the show. I think you guys are great.
Well, thank you.
We need to find a way to reverse jinx ourselves then.
That's true.
All right. Well, we'll start off with the story of the week. I'll just kind of lead off and kind of go with I think the main theme, at least today, but at least so far in the tournament, has been this new introduction of offsides technology. Now, we saw this a little bit in Champions League when that controversial Kane goal was called off because unique apps offsides. But we really saw it today, and Argentina was offsides 5 or 6 times in that first half. We're going to get into that. But there was one where the flag didn't go up, and the goal actually counted. I think it was a second goal, so it was a pretty impactful goal that Martinez scored, and they deemed that his shoulder lean was too far back. So I think it's completely changed the game, to be honest. And the fact that this is going to be in the Champions League going forward, we'll probably see it in the leagues going forward as well. And so I think we'll maybe see more teams adapt to playing a high defensive line because, again, a team has to get it right, spot on every single time when they make that run.
Yeah, Ben, I completely agree, and that was the thing that stood out to me watching the Sporting was just I was and I think the Argentina coach, which I'm forgetting his name right now, but
Scalari or something.
Yeah, Scaloni. Yeah, Scaloni. I think he was expecting Saudi Arabia to sit deep. I think he set out his team with he sacrificed one of his. Sometimes he plays 3 in midfield with Messi, and part of that front 3. He sacrificed a midfielder. Put Messi in there, put Papo Gomez out on the left, put Di Maria on the right. Neither of those are blessed for pace anymore. Mm-hmm. And he was expecting, I think, for this Saudi Arabia team to just sit back, and for them to try to unlock this defense. And instead, it was like watching. I don't know if you remember Rayo Vallecano a few years ago had that crazy manager. I can't think of his name, but they just had this crazy high offensive line. It was almost like Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds, mm-hmm. And it was really really fun. It was we can come on to maybe the fact that it does have some controversy with what's offsides, but it just made the game really 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 fun. And what it typically in the past had been, Iran sitting deep, or North Korea, I don't know if you remember in 2010 sitting really deep. That was a famous one.
Algeria, I remember.
Algeria, yeah. It just made it really, really exciting. And it added a little wrinkle to these small teams playing against big teams. So I enjoyed it, yeah.
Yeah, well, another thing to kind of say about that too is, we first really saw it in the Ecuador game, in the first game. And I think after they called, because Ecuador scored in the first 2 minutes, and I think everyone online was like, "This is corruption, straight up, in front of our eyes right now." And it turned out no, they actually made the right call. But it's one of those things where just things like that, I just don't think would have ever been seen by the naked eye. So it just completely changed how the game's played. So gotta adapt.
Yeah, Rex, when you woke up with that, did this score shock? What shocked you the most? Just the fact that Argentina had lost, or was it something even you were predicting, or?
No. Yeah, it was a shocking scoreline. And I recorded the game, and I was watching it. I've watched like the first half basically, and yeah, Ben like talking about the offsides. It was crazy because Messi scored a goal too that was called offsides, and it looked really close. And they're not showing the lines on the video program
Yeah.
like they do in the Premier League, so it makes it kind of harder to like see when they show the replay without the lines. But yeah, man, I mean, I was shocked. The lineup was a little weird. Jeremy, you might get into that. Some people probably should have started that didn't, perhaps, and some surprises in there too. But yeah, man, I mean, this is a huge surprise, and it's a warning to the big clubs too to take every game seriously.
Well, I think what's most wild about this is we saw Saudi Arabia a little bit, when they played that friendly versus the U.S. and they didn't show any of this. So I don't know if that was, like done on purpose, or maybe they've actually changed since that game, because they were sitting back when the U.S. played. It was pretty easy for us
Yeah,
to keep the ball. We just couldn't break them
yeah, we
down.
just couldn't score.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get started here. I mean, we've gotten into it a little bit, but I mean, Jeremy, what are your first takeaways? I mean, you you mentioned something to me that you didn't pick Argentina to actually go far. You kind of went against the grain here, because I think Argentina and Brazil were like the two favorites. I mean, was this kind of in your thinking, or did some of this like really shock you?
It didn't shock me. I think I subscribe to the Ronaldo theory of everything, which is that since probably 2012, we've been living in a world that should have really been inherited by Messi, and he's won the Ballon d'Ors and everything. But the Champions League, if you had told me in 2012 that I would have thought the Messi Ronaldo debate would have been done and dusted. At that point, Messi had won another La Liga title, his third straight Ballon d'Or. It looked like he was undoubtedly the greatest player of all time, and I think we can say that a lot of people think he is. But since then, history's kind of humiliated Messi. He lost in the World Cup final. He hasn't won a Champions League. He won one Champions League, but he lost several humiliating Champions League defeats. And I still think he's amazing, but I think there's this thing that's creeped in, which is that he's a little bit of a bottler on the big stage, and I think it's a little unfair because we can talk about the fact that he's gone far in cups, but there is something to the fact that I think that when he plays for Argentina and the way that the game has evolved, and I think this high line is part of it, is that the style of Messi as he's gotten older hasn't really benefited that evolution in the game.
Well, just
And
well,
go ahead.
I was thinking, just to kind of cut in. One thing I was thinking about, like watching this, is Messi was missing someone like Mbappe to make those
Yeah.
runs to kind of stretch that back line, or I guess you could have had maybe a midfielder make a run, a disguised run from deep. But I was thinking of Messi, and I don't want to say I was thinking of Pulisic too, but like these kind of players that require someone else to make runs for them to create space for them, because otherwise, they can't take players on 1v1 anymore, and so they're not really impactful without runs in front of them.
Yeah, and it was, and that was the amazing. I'm obviously very much Team Messi, and I think that what I just told you was probably the downer take on Messi's last 8 years. Obviously, he's had plenty of success and trophies and stats, but I do think in these tournaments, like you said, he needs somebody, and I don't think this Argentina team has been really beneficial for him because they've allowed him to have players work off the ball and do the hard work for him, but they haven't been. One thing they've been used to is having a lot of the ball, and I think that one thing that's beautiful in this game is that he just did not have any. Lautaro Martinez aside, who isn't even that quick.
Right.
He really didn't
That
have
showed up
anybody.
too.
He really didn't have anybody running off him. I think he was missing someone like Giovanni Lo Celso, who's not at this tournament, who was really good with this midfield deep runs. So yeah, it was. I guess to go back to your original point, I just had a feeling that this Argentina team, despite the winning streak, it was a little bit of fool's gold. And I think hadn't really been tested. And some of these games where they've won in the Copa America, they probably could have lost. I mean, I'm thinking about that semifinal. I think it was against Peru.
Yeah,
And
they advanced because Emi Martinez making like 3 saves in,
so
in a PK shootout.
I don't know. I think there are better teams out there. I think there are more well-rounded teams out there. Also, I just to talk a little bit more, I think their defense is a little bit suspect. Some of the selections they make in defense is suspect. We get onto the attacking options that the coach has chosen as well. So I round of 16 for me, but I could eat my words. They could also become the Spain of this tournament, lose their opening game like 2010, and then go win the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think to kind of focus? I mean, Rex, do you want to jump in or?
Yeah, I mean, well, just to hop on Jeremy's take, yeah, you look at the back four and who the starters were, and that's definitely a weakness. And I mean, I was kind of questioning Otamendi. I know he's got a lot of experience for Argentina, obviously, but he's pretty old. And I mean, you have Lisandro Martinez right there on the bench, and he's playing very well for United. I know he's like, he's not that tall, perhaps, but he's playing really well. I question that a little bit. And then, Di Maria, too, you would think he would provide some runs, but, he's old, too, now. So, yeah, I mean, the defense definitely, in my eyes, is the weakest area of the field for him, for sure.
I mean, the craziest thing about this game, because I actually did, like Jeremy said, I watched it from start to finish. Within, I want to say, I don't know, 15 seconds, Di Maria got the ball in the wing, squared a ball to Messi. Messi had a shot and forced a save. And then,
Yeah.
a couple minutes after that, they got a PK that I thought was actually, relatively soft. So it really did feel like, oh, this is going to be quite easy for them. And then just out of nowhere, the game completely flipped on a switch.
Mm-hmm.
And like one thing you definitely noticed was just the size of Saudi Arabia in almost like any kind of a 50-50 duel. They looked huge compared to Argentina. And it felt like they were kind of missing a little of some of that. But another thing that's kind of wild is normally when you see things like this, you think like the team that has the dominant team that lost has like 30 shots, and it just like maybe the keeper had a great day. Argentina only had 15 shots. I think that was surprising too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also go ahead, Rick.
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah, it's surprising for sure.
The other thing, I think a lot of praise has to go. I mean, there is some blame obviously at Argentina. I will say also Messi gave away the ball for the goal, so that's problematic, and you'd like to see him a little further up the pitch, and that was sort of the story of the game. But also, just credit to Saudi Arabia, the job done by their manager Renard, who I think Ben, you mentioned to me he had won 2 AFCONs. He's sort of like a gun for hire. Looks like Jamie Lannister. I think it's kind of fun. Just this swashbuckling, handsome French dude that just travels the globe, lives the best life, works for all these different international teams. But I looked at this Saudi Arabia team. 9 of their starters played for Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia, and so I think the continuity was definitely there. And they also seemed, I don't know if Ben, you picked this up on watching it, and Rex, maybe you can see this on the rewatches. I think the stadium atmosphere really affected them. I think they were ushered on by the crowd. I think once that doubt started creeping into Argentina, and I want to actually say this, maybe this is part of it too, about the offside rule, is that with this now change in law, it gives you a kind of more crushing feeling when you don't, like the goal you just scored doesn't count, because you kind of you're kind of face to face with like the unreality of what just happened. You know what I mean? Like the dream world, where you actually scored the goal. So it's like Lautaro Martinez. I don't know if you remember in the first half, he scores a goal, a chip, and he's almost like welling up with tears in his eyes, like celebrating.
Yeah. It was like 2 minutes before they said it didn't count. Like, it was crazy.
So in the past, that's a raised flag, and he knows immediately, and that the whistle's blown. So there's an emotional element here that I think that this offside rule changes.
Yeah, good point. I
mean, one last thing to kind of stick with Argentina, then we'll quickly move to USA, because I know you have you're on a short time, Jeremy. But one thing that definitely showed up was Argentina, like we mentioned, not having anyone to make those runs in front, and there was a bit of a controversy, at least a little bit after. You mentioned Lo Celso not being able to go for this tournament. They also missed Correa, who was was injured early in the week, and wasn't able to go for the tournament. So they had to make a quick replacement. And there was talks that maybe they would go for Alejandro Garnacho. And it was also like, I remember Giovanni Simone of Napoli was mentioned. Emi Buendia maybe could have been a choice. And they instead went with like this MLS guy, Thiago Alma. I mean, and we didn't see him today. I mean, do you think that was maybe a misstep? Do you think like someone like Garnacho, even though as young as he is, could have maybe been a difference maker today?
Yeah, I think he would have. I think Julian Alvarez, someone like him, could have started and would have made a difference. I also think that it may have been worth not starting Di Maria like you mentioned about his fitness before. It seemed like the wrong kind of match to just reintroduce him to the international stage. And honestly, I think maybe Lisandro Martinez, Brex mentioned Otamendi. I just think that his physicality and the way that he can play a high line himself with his speed and tenacity, I think would have been beneficial to maybe pushing Argentina just a little bit higher up the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think, I just think the selections all around were kind of poor. But I think at the end of the day, that lineup that they put out there should have beat this team. So, I kind of have sort of the same take with the USA, which is that like there are some selection issues, but ultimately it is the performance that really mattered.
And that is a pretty good way to kind of transition. So we'll quickly move on to USA and Wales, and just kind of get your first takes on this one.
Yeah, you guys are probably had the same exact take as me, which is that this is a game of two halves. I think anybody watching this pretty much felt that way. My dad's not even a soccer fan, or much of a soccer fan. Hope he's not listening to this. Probably gonna be upset. Hears that, but he immediately said it was just stunning to see the difference between the two halves. I mean, the first half, USA, the energy they had in that midfield and the attack, and just the interchanging players in that front line. Wales could not handle it. I think part of that was some selection issues with the Wales team. I know, Ben, you want to get onto that, but it was just so gutting how much they let off in that second half. And part of that, I think, is the fact that they spent so much energy in that first half.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the fitness of McKennie and Musa obviously became a factor here. Once McKennie came off, especially, I think that they lost some ability on set pieces to defend. I mean, that's going to be a problem with this team going forward in general, especially now they're facing England. It's just they're not a very good set piece team. They're very small. But I guess I'm not completely disappointed just because I think that this is a good Wales team. I think this is a very experienced Wales team. This is a very inexperienced USA team. So I guess the hardest thing for me is that a tie here is not ideal, just because going forward it looks like if they don't get a result in that England game, England may not have much to play for in that final game against Wales. So. Gutting from a result standpoint, but not too disappointed in USA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about you guys? You guys feel kind of okay as I do, or
yeah.
A little
it's
more
not
gutting?
like all. It's not all terrible, but obviously, winning 1-0 and then you end up drawing. It's a lot different than being Wales down 1-0 and coming back to get a point. So yeah, it's disappointing, but I don't know. I question some things. Like, I know hindsight is 2020, obviously, but maybe Berhalter brings in another center back when we're up 1-0 instead of, I think he put in Acosta, another DM. But I mean, maybe that just packs us in more, and we're under the gun even more. Who knows? But there's a lot of things he could have done. I think at least right after half or 60 minutes in to kind of change the tide a little bit. It kind of felt like he kind of just sat back and didn't do anything. He was kind of like, well, the first half was good. We'll play that way in the second half, and we don't need to make adjustments. And then, the adjustments were either not made or they were made too late.
I think a problem, too, is the adjustments he made. He brought on a couple guys that just hadn't been with the team at all in qualifying or in the Nations League. Like Haji Wright was a surprise selection, and he actually had to come on. But, I just kept thinking back to, like, all those times in the summer and in the fall. How many games did Jesus Ferreira and minutes get? He almost got, like, all of them, and he didn't even feature in this game. So, it's almost like Berhalter finally realized, oh, that was a mistake. And, I mean, and what's weird is there's all this talk about inexperience is kind of going to be my take. And we got worse as a team when we brought on older guys. When we switched Dest for Yedlin, when Acosta came on. Acosta literally is caught on the throw-in. That's the reason why they get the PK. First, it's Acosta allowing Aaron Ramsey to just run behind him. So it's just little things like that was really disappointing. But another thing too, for as dominant, as we were, and I thought we were too, at least on the eye. But you look at the shots. I mean, we had six shots all game and only one on target. And you don't really remember causing the goalie any real issues after that. Maybe Sargent having that header off the post, other than the Weah goal. So for his quote unquote dominance, we didn't really do anything in their final third to threaten them.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern for me is that the fact that you look at I think the big difference I was alluding to earlier. One of the big differences that Wales made was when they brought on Kiefer Moore, and suddenly they had
100%.
somebody, a target man up top to just. I mean, he won so many balls. They would just lump the ball up to him. He would basically control it, lay it off to Aaron Ramsey, to Bale, and we didn't have the ability. I mean, Jordan Morris came on and was basically playing the right wing, so we didn't have a player like that could really unlock a defense by being that focal point. And it seemed like in the second half, really our best chance. I mean, and this is sort of how we scored our goal was just on these breakaways, but we really didn't get the numbers forward. And by the end of the game, it looked like most of our players looked really knackered. In fact, actually, I kind of left my takeaway coming from this game, which is concerned that how is our fitness going to be going into this England game?
Yes.
Pulisic pretty much got roughed up most of the game. It seemed to be a strategy by Wales is to get some bodies on him. McKennie, he's been struggling for fitness for the last couple months, and honestly, he didn't like he came off looking the best. So I'm just concerned that can we put out this lineup that we started this game with, and can we get a result, at least stay in the game long against England to get a result. So that's my concern as well.
And a number of guys are on yellows too. So if they get a second yellow versus England, you're going to miss the big game versus Iran.
Yeah. 4 yellow cards, yeah.
I mean,
Rex, I was going to ask Rex real quick, though. I got to go in a second. But what did you think about Turner's performance?
I thought he played well. I mean, he made that big save, and he literally had nothing to do the whole game. But he did. I mean, I don't know if y'all remember. He came out for like a cross, and he tried to catch it instead of punching it. He kind of fumbled it, and I think he eventually ended up he got fouled. But that was a little worrying. Maybe that's just him not playing that much. But I don't know. I was pretty comfortable with him. The worry spot for me, I think, was Zimmerman. I think Ream was pretty solid, but Zimmerman, he was good in the air. He was really good in the air, but it was just a stupid challenge. He didn't have to do it. I mean, I was just really disappointed with that decision. And then, we got like Dest looked kind of rusty too, and he's another one, Jeremy, that is nursing an injury or coming back from an injury. So I don't know how fit he's going to be for the England game either. And now it's kind of looking like we're going to have to beat Iran, and if we can pick anything up from the England game, that could really be crucial. So we're going to have to figure out the lineup, and we're going to have to play the strongest team we can because the games are just even bigger now since we didn't win in the first game. We only got a draw. So, these last 2 games are huge, and they're really must-wins, or at least the England game, we got to get a point from it at least.
I mean, real quick, Jeremy, before you go, I do want to get your take on this. What were your thoughts on Gio Reyna not getting subbed on and getting any minutes?
Yeah, I thought that was a little odd. And I haven't been following his injury issues and his journey with the team as much, but I think it would have definitely. The reports are now that he was healthy. I think it was someone said 100%. My only thing is that I almost don't. We talked about the problem about the fact they were unable to unlock teams. He's probably a piece that can help you do that, but I honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know if it would have made such a difference. And I think that the biggest. This is sort of changing the subject, but the biggest difference for me, I was looking back, is if you had told me in 2018 or 2019 what this team would have been like at this World Cup, and maybe 2019, 2020, I would have thought that this would have been the Daryl DK tournament, and I would have thought that this would have been. I thought this would have been the type of game that we really needed a player like that for. And it's a shame that the USA, they're creating these players like Pulisic, like Gio Reyna. We were criticizing Messi earlier for the fact that he's a tiny midfielder, but we're not creating these strong number 9s that we used to be really good about creating. And
or pacey wingers, Way is
pacey wingers.
Way is the only guy we have. Maybe Aronson, but yeah.
So it's just a shame because I think someone like that would have been really key in this game because that first half, like you said, they dominated. They created they got lots of width, lots of creativity on the wings. Dest came inside a lot, and it seemed like we were just missing that final ball to somebody that could put it away.
Yeah, we were 4 for 30 crossing the ball.
Yeah, that's rough. Okay, well, quickly before I go, I want to say, do you guys still feel like the USA can come out of this group? Do you think it's is it a result against England that's the recipe here, or are we thinking that maybe that Iran Wales game can sort of go our way?
Oh, I hope so.
I was actually okay with this, to be honest. Well, I mean, everyone's thoughts, I guess, changed after the second half, where I was just like thankful that we didn't blow it.
Yeah,
But I didn't think about anything you said until a couple of minutes ago, where England might not have anything to play for in that last game versus
Yeah.
Wales. Because, I mean, I was thinking, we could maybe get by with 4 points and kind of maybe run up the score somehow. But now I'm not too sure about that. And as far as the way watching how we were just completely out physicaled in that second half. Now, they don't have necessarily Kiefer Moore, but I mean, Harry Kane isn't necessarily small, and they do
Yeah.
have Rice, Bellingham, in that midfield compared to what we have, and that if it gets
Mhm.
if it gets down to physical duels, I seriously worry about that.
is this the lineup you guys would play in that England game, or would you what changes would you make?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That is a tough one.
I don't know. I mean, Jeremy, just to hop on what you were talking about the clinical striker too. It kind of showed in the first half because I mean Sargent held up the ball well most of the game, but he really only had one chance and he missed. And a clinical striker. I mean, Barcelona, Jeremy, you watch a lot. Like maybe
Yeah,
Lua just one chance and he buries it, and that's all he needs. And we haven't had that since like Clint Dempsey probably up there at striker, right?
I mean, Ricardo Pepe is scoring goals for fun. Again, it's in Eredivisie,
yeah.
but I honestly feel like we were on a bad trajectory to maybe even miss qualifying for this thing until he started playing Pepe, and that's when we actually started going on a pretty good run of results.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a shame. Well, thank you guys for. I gotta run, but thank you for letting me join you all, and I'll keep listening throughout this World Cup. Maybe I'll join you for another one on these USA games, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
Argentina crashing out to Poland the next game or something. But but all right, I'm gonna head out.
all
See
right.
you, Jeremy.
Happy
Thanks.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, that was good. I was not expecting. I'm glad we were able to actually get him on for also Argentina, because I was like, oh, this is perfect. 'Cause,
Yeah.
'cause not really expecting that, but he went into dooms mode like pretty quickly. He was like just he had this philosophy that like Messi like lives in a hell world basically, just everything bad. He got to talk about that a little bit. Um,
Well, I kind of thought when Argentina won the Copa that would kind of be the monkey off the international, like their international backs, and they
mhm.
play, with more freedom. But we haven't seen that yet. But they could still, win the next two games, like Jeremy said, be like Spain. And I mean, the crazy thing is if they have 6 points and what if they finish second in their group? That means someone who won their group would have to play Argentina in the next round, which would be
Mhm.
kind
Yeah.
of, unfortunate. But yeah, man, crazy. And all that's all these games like matter, and we talk about like goal differential, and these games matter too. So every game's big. You can't take any team lightly.
Yeah, they keep making it on Fox at least. They keep making that bringing up that stat where like the chances of you not going through really are bad if you lose that first or you don't
Yeah,
get anything out of that first game.
it's
Um,
84% of the teams that win their first group stage make it to the knockout round.
yeah,
So I don't know what it is for draws,
that
but
is that is nervy for them. I mean, another thing too is I was kind of wondering, is this maybe the biggest upset, at least in our lifetime? For the sport. Now,
mm.
I'm not gonna be a historian and go back in the 50s and maybe something happened in the 30s. Maybe someone beat like West Germany or something.
Well, didn't
Um,
didn't like Senegal upset someone in like in
Senegal
the early 2000s?
Senegal beat France in I think 2000,
Right.
and France were the reigning World Cup champions. But
Mm.
I mean, this actually would have been a good thing for Jeremy because Jeremy might have known. I don't necessarily know
Jeremy, I
if
watched that game with Jeremy. I remember he
if
taped it and we watched it.
I don't know if France were like also expected to be repeat champions if they were maybe having
Right.
having some issues. I mean, this Argentina team hasn't lost in like 36 games going into this.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's a hard schedule. They play, in Comball, right? They're in the Comball.
yeah,
I mean, they're playing like Brazil. They're playing, Ecuador is a good team. They're playing Uruguay. They're playing Chile. So
I mean, it's kind of funny too because like last week I mentioned one of the themes I was interested in would be if there would be a regional component in this, and it's possible that really did show up because, like Jeremy said, that crowd was 100% behind Saudi Arabia, and they played in a gigantic stadium.
Yeah,
I think they said something. They said in the beginning that it was going to be like 80,000, which I was like, whoa, that's a
80.
big stadium. And they
Yeah,
said the
85 or
capacity was
something.
88. They were over.
88.
They were over. At least the official was over capacity, and
Mhm.
they were making their voices heard. Especially like anytime. I think like in the first like really early in the game, there was like a hard crunching tackle on like Messi, and like just everyone just got uplifted. So it's like one thing to like be tactically smart, but you got to time your challenges like to perfection, which they were able to do. But they're
Yeah.
also like really good going forward. Like the goal that won the game, I think it's the first time we've actually seen a goal from somewhat outside. We've seen a bunch of like
Mm,
cutbacks or like some headers, but that was the first like
true.
long, like relatively distance goal. So yeah, definitely deserved. Which is another
Yeah,
thing too. Normally when you have upsets
definitely.
like this, you feel like, oh, a team just kind of like got away with one. Oh, they packed
Mhm.
it in, they boxed it in. And like Jeremy was saying, it was tactically done and deserved. So.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
And so when we are gonna, we'll move on and get double down on the U.S. U.S. game. We'll do a little more in depth review. Goals from Tim Rea and Gareth Bale, like we mentioned. One of the tidbits I wanted to get out there is this is maybe embarrassing to say too, but I knew Tim Weah's father was George Rea, but I just knew him as like the president of Liberia, and maybe he was like a
Mhm.
a former soccer player. I did not know he was a former Ballon d'Or winner of like AC Milan. So that was a little wild. But
Yeah.
and it is good to see him because apparently he I haven't really followed him at Lille, but apparently he's been suffering from some injury setbacks, and so he hasn't played many
Yeah.
games for Lille. And
Mhm.
apparently the last few
He
games he
started
played,
hurt.
he was wingback. So
Mm.
completely put him in a different formation, and oh man, was he was maybe to me he was the most important player of the game, and we'll get
Mm.
into that. But
Yeah. Well, honestly, though, like when I first looked at the lineup, I was surprised to see him because I figured, yeah, like he hasn't had minutes. Maybe Aronson would start there. But it paid off because, like you said, Weah was willing to make those like pacey runs in behind.
and
I
he
mean,
was the
Aronson
only one.
could have done it too, but yeah, and it paid off with the goal. So I can't criticize that decision by Berhalter at all.
Because I mean, we'll get into the lineup, but one thing that definitely showed up is Weah was making the runs and stretching, keeping that fullback or wingback on that side. I guess Nico Williams, honest, Weah was actually getting the best of Nico Williams a lot, at least in that
Mm.
first half. But on the left side, it wasn't Pulisic doing that. It was Anthony Robinson, our fullback, doing that. And this is where the problems came up. Is Wales were inviting this by playing their wingbacks so deep. And once they
Hmm.
pushed forward, that forced Robinson to kind of play honest and stay back because you gotta mark the guy making the run, and we weren't able to adjust to that because Pulisic was not offering any kind of runs ahead. He just wanted the ball to feet, and he was kind of staying next to Sargent. Sargent wasn't doing anything
Hmm.
either, and that really showed up in the second half. A lot of people said, or there's been a lot of takes online that you shouldn't go after Pulisic. He was roughed up. I am going to blame Pulisic at least a little bit for that. He needed to offer runs, and if he's not going to run without the ball, I think Aronson needs to start over him for England.
Yeah.
You asked Jeremy what changes you'd make. Um,
Hmm.
I'd personally like to see maybe Cameron Carter Vickers over Zimmerman, but that's probably not going to happen. Because again,
Yeah.
Zimmerman's been like Jesus Ferreira. He just
Mhm.
out of nowhere got inserted into the starting lineup and just wasn't dropped. So he at least has
Mhm.
played in so many of these games. They at least know how he plays. With Cameron Carter
Yeah.
Vickers, while he's been playing for Celtic and been playing Champions League games, I can't remember the last time he had a cap. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
been a while for sure.
But I would
Yeah, that's a good
change
point.
I would change Aronson for Pulisic at the moment.
Tell you what, I think I've seen this online too, and I honestly don't know how it would work at all. But somehow, like taking out Sargent and playing with a false nine, and maybe playing like I've seen Reyna playing there. But
Yeah.
if Pulisic's not going to make the runs, then Aronson maybe for Pulisic and Reyna as a false nine, because you can't. I don't think you could have Pulisic with the false nine because, like you said, Pulisic's not going to be willing to make those deep runs.
Mhm.
So it just kind of be like the two are playing the same position. But maybe if you put Anson there, or I don't know, I don't know, Reyna
I,
is kind of small. I don't know. There's a lot of problems with that, but it's a potential, maybe.
See, another thing too, a lot of people have been wanting to be like, "Oh, why wasn't Gio Reyna subbed in?" And I asked Jeremy about this I mean, but
Mm.
I do have some thoughts about that. Is I don't think Giorena in that particular in that second half would have necessarily helped because he's kind of similar. He's also a ball to feet kind of person, and he's very skillful with the ball. He can make runs with the ball. He can make men miss essentially, but he needs someone to make runs ahead of him too.
Mhm.
And so the only thing I can think of, if you're going to play Giorena, at least in that forward line, I would play Tim Weah as striker.
Ooh, that's interesting. And then Aronson could be.
Aronson and Giorena on the
Ooh.
wings, and they basically play in like the half space, but they have some space to actually play in and operate in because Tim Weah would make some runs in behind.
Mm. I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
But I'm not. It's Berhalter. I'm expecting Jesus Ferreira to start because they're going to be like, "See, I played
Mhm.
Sargent. Sargent didn't have a good game. Sargent had 17 touches, which is not good.
Yeah. No,
Kiefer
that's
Moore
bad.
came on in the second half and had like 25 touches, which kind of shows, yeah. But we'll get started at least with the starting lineup. So it was a 4-3-3, nothing different than what we've seen. It was Serginho Dest, Zimmerman, Tim Ream, which was a little surprise start, but good to see. And Tim Ream had a good game.
Mhm.
And then
He
Anthony
did, yeah.
Robinson, which is kind of what we expected a little bit. It was Weston McKinney, Tyler Adams, and Musa. Tyler Adams is captain. And again, that MMA midfield was probably the best that we had during qualifying, so that wasn't really surprising to see. Though McKinney, like Jeremy mentioned,
Mhm.
maybe he wasn't at full strength, and that did kind of show
Yeah.
up a little bit. And then the
Mhm.
attack was Tim Weah, Sargent, and Pulisic. And so we've kind of gone over a little bit about the starting lineup. Um, and I did make some comments about it is just absolutely wild. We wasted all those minutes on Jesus Ferreira in the summertime, and Berhalter didn't seem think he was good enough to come on at least do something
Even
in the
play,
second
yeah,
half.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean maybe he
Mhm.
would have at least shown for the ball because Sargent wasn't doing that either. Again,
Mhm.
Jesus Ferreira played. I've kind of been criticizing him. I don't think he ends that game with 17 touches. So
Yeah, I think you're and Sargent was dropping deep kind of like, Harry Kane does at times. And that he helped with the goal because he
true.
held up the ball well.
Hmm.
But I mean that was it. And him dropping deep, like you said, you don't have really a target guy up there. So I think you're right. I think Ferrer will probably start in the England game, and maybe Reina too. Maybe Berhalter's like, look, we're saving a couple people because we play 3 games in a short amount of time, and we get leggy. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's lots of things he can do and tinker with, and he really didn't do it. Like especially in the second half when it was the completely opposite of the way we were performing in the first half, and he didn't do enough to change things up in my mind.
Yeah, and another thing I was thinking about too is if you are going to play Pulisic and you're not going to get width or you're not going to get runs in behind on that left wing spot, and you have to rely on Robinson to do that, and maybe you rely on Dest or maybe Scaly plays or Yedlin plays if Dest can't go because he seemed to be dealing with something as well.
Mm,
You could play a back three and have wing backs, and that way those guys could actually play forward more without having to necessarily worry about what's behind them, and you'd have another
mm.
center back, and that's kind of what you were talking about. But again,
Oh, Wales did, yeah.
we haven't seen that from Berhalter. I think maybe he played that versus like Northern Ireland like 2 years ago, but we haven't seen that from him at all. So you can't. I don't think you can tanker just for England. So
Right, right.
but we'll get
Yeah.
into Wales because this is we mentioned a tale of two halves. I think this was more on Wales doing and getting the first half wrong than necessarily us like being super great, which is going to go against the grain. But Wales
Mm,
basically played a 5-3-2, and the reason why I say that is because the wingbacks were staying with the back line. Sometimes you'll hear a 3-5-2 formation, and normally it's kind of the same thing, but the difference is the wingbacks are further up, and they can basically play as midfielders um,
mm,
and that helps you a little bit more when they're pushed back like that. That allows the other team to kind of push in on you. And so what really happened in that second half or in that first half was it was actually really relatively easy for us to press them high, get them to kind of go long because you only have like Gareth Bale or Dan James. When Gareth Bale was winning the ball, he was heading it to Dan James. They didn't have the target in more, so that helped. And it was they didn't have options to necessarily pass from the back. When the wingbacks pushed forward in the second half, they did, and that really frustrated us too. But
mm.
it was Connor Roberts, Chris Mepham, Joe Rondon, Ben Davies at the back, And then like Nico Williams, which is a bit of a surprise, at left back or left wing back because he was right back at Liverpool. Apparently, he's been playing
Yeah.
left back at Forest, so he's 2-footed, which I didn't know. And that's looking like they only sold him for like 10 million, so maybe Forest got one on Liverpool because he looked very good. Now he was maybe at fault for the goal, or maybe not. That's maybe harsh, but he was very good in the second half. And then in midfield, it was Aaron Ramsey, Ethan Ampadu, and Harry Wilson. Wilson was a bit of a surprise too because we normally see him further up for Fulham. Ampadu was very, very good, which we'll get into. And then, yeah, it was Gareth Bale and Dan James as kind of like the two strikers, which did not work at all.
No.
So we'll kind of get started there, Rex. I mean, what were your first thoughts on the lineup? I see you wrote maybe more not starting. Was that the surprise for you?
I mean, possibly, just because we talked about him last week. He's on a bit of a tear, goal scoring wise, in the Premier League. So I was a little bit, not confused, I guess, but I was like wondering if he would start or if he's going to be like a bench option. And then Ampadu is usually a center back, and him being the defensive mid there, it really allowed him to come back and be a fourth center back. So,
Hmm.
at times they could have a bunch of guys back, which helps like Wilson and Ramsey get up the field a bunch. But
Yep.
I mean, the main thing with Wales was, I mean, James's pace. I was so concerned about it, and it really wasn't a problem because they couldn't really get him the ball. And then it's kind of ironic because I was scared of Dan James's pace, and they go with Kiefer Moore in the second half, who doesn't have pace, but he's huge, and he was a ton more threatening than James. And I mean, Jeremy mentioned it, like they put him in, and they won a ton of 50-50 balls, and then that was tough, and it just takes a lot of energy to guard someone that big. I think our center backs did a pretty good job for the most part, but uh, it just when the ball is in your half the whole second half, mistakes are going to happen. Goals going to be scored, PKs maybe,
Hmm.
because you're just defending so deep the whole time.
I
So it's
mean,
only a matter of time, like before Wales scored, and they could have maybe scored another one and won.
the stats really are wild because the possession was the U.S. 59, Wales 41, but it was 50-50 in the
Mm,
second half. So I mean that just shows you how lopsided it was between both halves.
mhm. Yeah,
Um,
that's true. Kind of thought Ward would start too, the Leicester keeper, but because I believe Hennessy is the backup to Dean
yeah,
Henderson at Forest. So I thought Ward, we talked about him last week, how he started the season so poor, but he's got 6 clean sheets. I thought maybe he would start, but yeah, I mean Hennessy didn't have much to do, so we couldn't really tell if that was a good pick or a bad pick because he was sitting there on a lawn chair most of the time.
yeah, that is a good call. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was Hennessy that was in goal, and he had a spectacular game versus Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine,
Mhm.
from what I remember, were all over Wales, and Wales were just kind of frankly lucky to get through that game. And I think they got it with like an own goal, by it was Gareth Bale shot, but I think it was an own goal. Um,
Yeah, the scruffy goal
but
for
I
sure.
remember I remember Ukraine having like something like 20 shots and dominate the dominate of possession, and Wales was just kind of able to kind of skate by. Um,
Mhm.
and so we'll kind of we'll do a quick like rundown. I mean, early chances did go the U.S. way. Basically, Tim Weah was able to get behind Nico Williams. Dest was playing. Dest was actually pretty good in that first half with that ball over the top.
Mhm.
Weah was able to get in behind Nico Williams. It was a really good ball hit to him, and then he crossed it early. And basically run down nearly heads it into his own net. It was
Oh yeah.
relatively a save by Hennessy, but Hennessy just basically was there. He didn't even like move his arms. And then Anthony Robinson was able to get in behind Connor Roberts and cross the ball to Sargent, and that's the one that hit and missed the post. But let's get started with the first goal because this basically starts a little bit before even the goal. So Tim Weah makes a great run behind Nico Williams again, and what he does is he runs off the shoulder. So he runs on the outside, and the ball just ends up going out for a goal kick. I think it's a ball by Tyler Adams. But the thought is there. I think Nico Williams is worried about that thought, and so immediately following the Wales get a goal kick and again go long, and Bale wins the first header, but he's heading it to Dan James. So Zimmerman or Tim Ream's able to win the second ball. We get the ball back, and then Basically, what happens is Robinson floats the ball to Pulisic, and Pulisic heads it towards Musa. Musa then heads the ball upfield to Sargent, and Sargent does a really good job to keep his body in front of the goal. And he's able to get a touch towards Pulisic. But the big issue here was, I think it's Rondon. Rondon makes a mistake of following Sargent and then allowing Pulisic to just get behind him. He got way too tight, and basically, this is one of those times when sometimes people don't like false nines, and this is kind of why some actual managers love false nines, because you can sometimes get a defender to run out of position. And the reason why we score this goal is because the place that Raya runs to is completely open, the open space, because that's where
Yeah,
Rondon would have been. Pulisic does a good job to get by Rondon, carries the ball, and then has a very good pass to Weah. But Raya's run creates the goal. If Pulisic had to do that alone, I think he would have just run to the side and then passed backwards. I don't think he would have had the pace to really do anything. So it was the run in front of him, and the reason why I mentioned Weah's run before that is because the first one, Raya runs off the shoulder. This one, Raya fakes like he's gonna run off the shoulder and then cuts inside. So he wrong foots Nico Williams. That's the reason why he's able to get by him. And then
mm,
I think Ben Davies is also he's got his back turned, so he's not really prepared for that. And then really
yeah,
good weighted pass and really good finish.
yeah, yeah. It was a nice through ball too, and yeah, really calm, cool, collected finish from Waya. And he hasn't been playing that much. He didn't look like he was rusty in the finishing department because that was really
Hmm.
calm goal.
And it was one of those things like you mentioned to give Sargent credit, and I think we should, because that was good play from him. It was one
Yeah,
to
that's about it though.
bring the center back to him, and then to get the touch to him. Yeah, that's true. Um,
Unfortunately, but at
but
least he did something, I guess.
But maybe in at least in the second half, I could put it down as like play of the game. So after Wales had a pretty good period with the ball, Weah again gets free on the wing and then quickly plays another really good early cross that Pulisic. It finds Pulisic. Chris Mepham goes to the ground and catches Pulisic in the box, and the replay actually showed Mepham timing this to perfection.
Yeah.
But if he had gotten that just a little bit off, I think it's a PK.
Hmm.
Um, but again, you saw at least the ability to counter a little bit. Weah, just anytime he was able to get the ball in space was good. He was good with his decision making, and he was good trying to take players on. We just weren't able to see that enough, at least in that second half. Um, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, that was all the fun, at least on our end, because basically, a couple minutes after that, Wales got a free kick, and Wilson has pretty good delivery. The U.S. can't really clear the ball. Tyler Adams had a fantastic game, but
Yeah.
maybe the one mistake he made was he tried to basically he tried to clear this and he like mishit it. He just kicked it in the air. And Tyler Adams
Yeah.
is like
It didn't go far at
five
all.
foot 7 or 8, and I think it's Rundon. Rundon just easily wins the header, and then Ben Davies is able to do a dive, and this is where the Turner save came in. Um,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, that was a great save.
it was a great save. But then
After not much to
we
do.
got we got lucky because right directly following this, so this is all happening in basically 2 minutes. Um, Wales get that corner kick, send the ball in, and just it's very good delivery by Wilson, and just no one marks Kiefer Moore, or just Moore is like 6'5", and no one can mark Kiefer Moore. But we got very lucky on this because it's a free header, and he gets really good contact, and he just barely missed it
Yeah, I missed.
over
Yeah.
the head. Turner's got no chance if that's somewhat on target.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was really worrying too.
And then finally, those are basically like the main chances. There really wasn't a ton. It was very very similar to us in that first half, where Wales all of a sudden were the dominant team with the ball, but just you don't really remember Turner really being that uncomfortable. But until basically towards the end, where um, I call it an impact sub. So the Wales coach maybe got the first half wrong, but to his credit, I think he got the second half right. So he brought on Brennan Johnson, and he basically switched formations to a 4-4-2. Trying not to echo, but I am. So what he did is he brought Brennan Johnson on, and you were able to basically have Connor Roberts and Brennan Johnson both on the same wing if they wanted to go forward. And this was a big issue for us because Pulisic wasn't doing any kind of defensive work, and because our midfielder was already stretched, it was hard for him to kind of do, basically it forced us to play further wider in midfield than we wanted to. So what you saw a lot was Anthony Robinson was isolated a lot. He didn't have any kind of help in that second half, and basically within just a few minutes from coming on, Brennan Johnson gets a ball over the top. He does a good job to keep the ball. It looks like maybe it's going to go out, but he keeps it from going out. Um, you know, Wales basically get a throw in after this, and just within seconds, Brennan Johnson quickly throws it in, and Aaron Ramsey's able to get behind Kellen Acosta, who I guess they take an early they take the early throw in, so it's very good on Wales, but um, the problem was, just not necessarily tracking that run. Aaron Ramsey is just completely free on goal, and then he just squares it, and then Zimmerman takes him out.
Yeah, and because of the formation change too, and us kind of just sitting there and not reacting to it. I mean, it just completely changed the game. And like I said, like we got some options on the bench, and Berhalter was just too late. I feel like to do some subs. I know, hindsight's 2020, and you thinking we got the 1-0 lead, but I don't know, man. There's a lot of things he could have done. Like I mentioned he could have brought on another center back. You mentioned
Hmm.
he could have brought on, Reyna. He brought on Aronson, which was maybe too little, too late. But I don't know. I'm very curious to see how the lineup for England goes now because I don't know. Maybe in my mind he rested some players for the England game. Maybe Ferreira, maybe Reyna. So we'll see. Because if they don't play, then it's kind of starting to be like, is Reyna in the doghouse for something, or is Ferreira in the doghouse for something? Because like you mentioned, why would you bring him and not play him, especially Ferreira, when you can have Pepe? So I
To
don't
see
know.
to see
I'm curious
Haji
about this lineup.
to see Haji
Haji
Wright
Wright.
was such a surprise to
I
me.
honestly liked him though, like in that brief cam because he was so big.
He did look
It was
big.
kind of like the Kiefer Moore sub, where it was kind of like, well, maybe he'll get on the end of one of these crosses, and he got on like one or two.
That's
But
but that's a
I
problem.
agree, he
We
doesn't
weren't
play.
we weren't playing him like Kiefer Moore. Now I don't really know
Mm,
anything about Haji Wright, to be honest.
neither do I.
I'll just kind of get that out there. I know he's been scoring goals, but what they were doing with Kiefer Moore is they were playing balls meant for him, where he was either open or he was in position to control it. Where we were just crossing the ball aimlessly, and they're like, oh,
Yeah, popping balls in
maybe he'll get
blindly.
on the end of
Yeah.
something. Um,
Yeah, and you mentioned it in the script too. Just speaking of poor balls in, Pulisic in the beginning had a couple terrible corners,
Oh,
terrible corner kicks. So
that is another thing too. I do not want him to be on set piece delivery for England.
yeah,
If
well,
nothing else,
Katie and I were talking about that too because you got a lot of other players that could do better
mhm.
than that. I mean, Aronson, a couple others. So yeah, I agree. It was bad. And then yeah, like you mentioned, some of those crosses were just like, I mean, they were put in a dangerous area, but there's no one there.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe pick up your head and pick someone out instead of just putting a ball in a dangerous area sometimes. But I don't know, man. I'm worried. I feel like we really have to get like a point from this match because I don't want to wait and like see if Wales beats Iran like 4-0 and then loses to England, then we're gonna have to beat Iran and we're gonna have a better goal differential than Wales. So I don't know. It just gets really nervy the longer we go without winning a game. And like that last game against Iran, it could be a game where we have to win and we have to win
Win by a lot.
pretty big
Yeah.
with goal. Yeah, it could be we have to win like 4 or 5-0. And I don't see this team scoring that many goals, honestly. Kind of because we mentioned we don't have, a talisman striker, a really good finishing kind of striker. But I mean, we do have the midfield players that could score that much, possibly. But I don't know. I mean, I'm getting more nervous. I mean, a point's not bad. It keeps us kind of, alive for a couple more days. But
Hmm.
Black Friday, might be very black indeed.
What's funny
You like that?
is, good
I'm
job.
teasing.
What's funny is if you take away that England Iran score and just look at England, what England's form was coming into the tournament. Um, you look in the Nations League. I don't think they scored a goal. They didn't score a
Yeah,
goal, and it was teams like Hungary that they were going blank with. You look
yeah,
at the
yeah. They
XG.
didn't play great teams.
You look at what they did versus Iran, and they scored 6 goals. The XG was 2, and a couple of
Hmm.
these were just I think from set pieces or Iran just really not marking, at least on that right side or like their left side when someone was like cutting in. It was just I think Sterling and Rashford both basically scored the same goal. Oh, Saka and Rashford basically scored
Okay.
the same goal. Um, and it's just I don't necessarily know if I'm necessarily as negative as maybe I should be, where I do think you could maybe make it ugly, to be honest, and maybe
Hmm.
get something. I don't think
Yeah.
I'm seeing people really because of that result. All of a sudden, people are talking like England, like they're Brazil, where I don't think it was a controversial take to kind of be negative on England
Yeah.
going into this tournament. And
They did so bad in the Nations League. You're right. And Germany was the same way. They're like a favorite in the World Cup, but they were terrible in the Nations League.
I guess to keep the focus on England, one thing we did see from Southgate was a formation change. So he had been doing like a weird 3-4-3 like hybrid kind of thing, and he went with basically three in midfield. It was
Yeah.
basically a 4-3-3, and the midfield was Rice, kind of like the DM with Mason Mount and Jude Bellingham, which was a little
Mhm.
different. So I don't know if we'll necessarily see that again. Another thing too is I don't know how long I can believe Roberto Carlos being a thing. Now Shaw was very very good, versus Iran, but Shaw has not had the best season for United. So is that a
Yeah.
one off? Or I mean, Shaw was very good for England in the Euros. So maybe not. Maybe sometimes players get into an environment where they're a different player.
Yeah.
They
Maguire's
they play above their means.
another.
Maguire was very
Yeah.
good in this game
I
too,
don't
and I don't
I
know if
don't get it.
I trust that. So
Yeah.
I,
Against a better team. Yeah.
so I'm less bearish or bullish. Wait,
Mhm.
less worried necessarily.
Mm.
Um,
Well, one thing I was thinking about, Jeremy mentioned maybe if England do beat us pretty good, then maybe they don't have anything to play for against Wales, and Wales can kind of come out and win that game and knock us out of the group for sure.
hmm,
But I mean, the one thing I was thinking about, like devil's advocate, there is hopefully, if England did mix up the lineup, I'd be hopeful that you put some of these guys in that don't start, and they would really be wanting to go out there and make their mark to start the next game. So they would play really hard. Like hopefully the players would have something to play for. Like I'm not going to play that much. Maybe if I go out here and score a bunch of goals, Gareth Southgate puts me in the lineup in the round of 16, and I can kind of work back into the starting lineup. So like maybe hopefully that kind of thing would happen. Like maybe Madison's back because he's healthy and he's like, hey, I want to be the main number 10 for England, and he plays great. But I don't know. It's still not a good situation to be in, coming down to the last day
sure.
with goal differential, and England maybe not having anything to play for. It's still not comfortable. But just a little bit of hope there if that did happen,
Well,
that the England players would want to force themselves into the
I'm gonna
starting
do
lineup.
a psychology game. Where is that the word? Where all these scenarios
Yeah.
are if what we have to do versus Iran, because maybe we don't get anything from England. Let's say we beat
Mhm.
England, so we have 4 points going into Iran. We are going to be we have quote unquote a young squad. I don't really trust Berhalter. The mindset is going to be completely flipped, and I can totally see us bombing versus Iran in that scenario. If we because we'll be too high on our own supply. Everyone will be celebrating like we basically won the World Cup. Well, I think it'll be
Mhm.
hard to regroup ourselves.
Yeah, and I do think, well, before the England game, I thought Iran was a pretty solid team. I mean, I think they're ranked like 20th in FIFA, so maybe they're better than that England game showed, and that could be a really tough game for us to end the group with too,
I mean,
and more pressure too if we have to get a result.
they were sitting back. I think it was like a 5-4-1, essentially. So once England were able to get a goal or two, that kind of forced them to completely change their mindset. Um, And then obviously England would able to just kind of pile on. But one thing I did notice is, Taremi was able to score, but I actually thought Iran didn't necessarily have a ton of pace. Now, Carlos actually also played a couple players that that are normally starters. I remember like
Mhm.
their number six usually plays, and he didn't come on until the second half.
Yeah, and they didn't
So
play their leading goal scorer either.
yeah, so I don't know. We're just kind of I don't know. We're talking a little bit about that. Um, One thing I do want to get out before we kind of dive a little bit more into the U.S. and Wales is, I kind of rode Keldon Acosta for not being, in tune for that throw in. Acosta maybe saved U.S. In the tournament with the decision to
Mhm.
bring Gareth Bale down because it looks like Wales basically were able to get a ball long. It looked like Kiefer Moore was going to get past Tim Ream, so I actually think Turner does a very good job to come out and to head this ball away. Now it's
And
not
Turner? Do you mean Manuel Neuer?
Oh,
Teasing.
well, that
It reminded me of a Neuer. Yeah.
Neuer did that once, and I think it was versus. It might have been versus Shakhtar. Oh, maybe he was at Shakhtar at that point, but yeah, that ended up
Oh yeah,
that
Jaka.
ended up going against them because they scored on that. But
Hmm.
I think Bale's about to line up, and Costa
Yeah,
does a very good job to take him out.
yeah. I think it would have been a goal.
I cheekily tweeted that I was surprised it wasn't a red because I think it's a denial of a goal scoring opportunity. But
Oh, glad it wasn't a red, but
that was
it was smart. It was a smart
that
play.
was very good by Acosta. So to be fair to him,
Yeah,
so
it's part of the veteran. The positive part of bringing on like a veteran players. You might not get a lot of attacking play, but maybe he will make a smart play because he has so much experience, and it proved there. I mean, because yeah, if we lost this one, we'd be in big trouble. A tie at least keeps our hopes alive a little bit.
yeah. And so we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I mean, what was the difference in the two halves to you? Was it just more coming on, or something a little bit different?
Yeah, I think it was what you mentioned, more coming on, and then they kind of changed their style of play. And I think more was like a big factor of that. I think maybe Rob Page, the Wales coach, he might have had plan A, and then plan B is we just bring on Kiefer Moore and target him in the box and send in crosses. And then when they're down at halftime, maybe he's like, hey, we're just going to go to plan B. We're going to change some things around. We're going to bring on a tall striker because it's the complete opposite of Daniel James, Kiefer Moore.
Yes.
So it's a huge adjustment that the U.S. team has to make because you're dealing with a small, like pacey guy, and then it's a huge, bullish, physical, guy that's just a monster in the air. So I mean that was a brilliant decision, and like I said, I think we should have reacted quicker and we should have reacted better than the way we did. But I mean it was a great job by Rob Page. I would have loved to have been in the locker room at halftime just to see like what Rob Page was like. What did he do to motivate people? Did he motivate people, or did he just say, "Hey, we got this game. We're changing the system"? And then I'd also like to be in the Berhalter locker room to see what he did at halftime because I have the feeling that he didn't do enough, but maybe he was doing a bunch of stuff in the locker room we don't know, and he was just like, "Hey, we don't need to change the formation because we're down." I don't know.
Mhm.
I'd just be curious to be a fly on the wall in both those locker rooms at halftime to see what the managers were saying and what they were planning for the second half because yeah, it was completely different, and it wasn't just because it wasn't just because James came out, and Kiefer Moore came in. It was other factors too, like you mentioned earlier. But yeah, man, I mean, it was impressive to see because it really was a completely different team.
I mean, one thing that definitely, what Moore didn't just offer them to go long. What he was doing is anytime he was getting on the ball, he was keeping it. And so what that did is that allowed everyone to push all the way up again. And
Hmm.
once the wingbacks were able to get further up, I wish that SofaScore app had touches between halves because I would guess that both Nico Williams and Connor Roberts had maybe double or triple the touches in our final third in that second half. They were so much further up and so much more involved, and both were very, very good. Both were good with their decisions. Both very good on the ball. I mean, Connor Roberts was almost their supply guy, and he wasn't just going long. He was threading balls hard on the ground. Breaking lines essentially, able to find more and more, would collect it, keep it, and again, that was just bringing more people into the play, because
Yeah,
what's kind of weird is Bale is the hero. Bale wins the PK, but you don't really remember him doing a whole lot.
no,
And so
yeah, he didn't touch the ball
they
too
needed
much.
something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, honestly, the first half he was pretty anonymous. He barely touched the ball, but James was too, pretty much. So, but yeah, I mean, someone like Bale, he's so good at like at dead ball kicks and things like that. That it's kind of like the opposite of Sargent. All Bale needs is like one chance, and he's gonna put it away. PK, free kick, whatever. And Sargent's kind of the opposite. He's gonna need a couple chances to score. He's not a prolific scorer. Like I mean, what was that? It was like Bale's 40th goal for Wales, 43rd goal for Wales. So he's a proven goal scorer on the national stage. All he needs is one chance. But I mean, we did a good job of limiting his chances he scored on the PK, which was good. But I mean, they kind of. I thought they would live and die by Bale, and it was almost kind of like they lived and died by Kiefer Moore. I know
I
Bale
think so.
scored the PK,
Uh
but
huh.
so that'll be interesting too going forward. I would imagine Bale will be more impactful and get the ball more because that's going to be Wales' plan. But And I thought Aaron Ramsey kind of showed his age too. He's not who I remember him as playing for Arsenal. I know that was a long time ago, but
Hmm.
he was solid, but not necessarily like the flair, creative player that I remembered. I know he hasn't played that much either for his club, but it was interesting to see.
Yeah, I think they mentioned. Is he at Nice? He's somewhere in France.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah, he's at
they said
Nice.
he hasn't been playing many games for them.
Nice hasn't been playing well. Yeah,
Um,
I think Schmeichel went there.
right.
Schmeichel,
Yeah.
and I think he kind of. I heard rumors that he wants to leave. So I don't know. It's a bad situation there. I don't think the players are having fun and they're not doing well at all, and they were supposed to.
I mean, you mentioned Sargent. I do want to touch on him a little bit. One thing that's weird is he's always played as a false nine for us, basically anytime he's played. And at Norwich, at least in the EPL, I haven't watched him in the championship, but I actually looked on the SofaScore thing, at least for the lineups. What he's done is he's either played on the wing with Pookie, or he's played in a two with Pookie. Pookie's a striker.
Mm.
We've never played him with someone.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
like
true.
are we fitting what the scround the round peg in a square hole kind of thing in that situation? And again, if we are, I do put that down to Berhalter again, because another thing that's weird is Sargent wasn't involved in the last campaign or the last camp that we did,
Mm.
and I don't think it was because Berhalter had seen enough and he was always going to include Sargent. I think Berhalter
Yeah.
just kind of freaked out towards the end because we saw that with the Haji Wright decision.
Yeah, and to your point too, if you did go that way and try to go maybe like a 4-4-2, then Musa or Adams or McKennie, one of those players in the midfield would be out, and that's our key, that's our heart, that's our engine room. So yeah, I mean you'd have to figure out the personnel, not necessarily like the formation.
And if we did do 4-4-2, um, one, I think it's actually better, at least to defend in the block. But you would need to have whoever we'd play on the wing would have to know that they would have to come back and do defensive work.
Yeah, yeah,
So that way the fullbacks wouldn't get overrun. I mean, 17 touches. We'll touch on the negatives and then we'll go on to Wales and then kind of cut it short. It's going to be a little long, but um, Sargent with 17 touches was pretty rough. We've touched on Zimmerman a little bit, but my biggest fear was the lack to be able to stretch the field, because I keep focusing on what Wales are doing with the wingbacks, and basically, I mean, I took a couple of pictures on my phone in the second half. I was able to rewatch it last night, and their back line was just camped on our halfway line the entire second half of the field because we were
mm,
allowing it. We our
yeah.
front players looked completely disinterested or exhausted, whatever it was, but they weren't trying to do those runs like they were in that first half. So that was an
Do
issue
you
for
remember?
me.
Do you remember like now that you mention it, like I feel like that was when we were playing it for strikers in high school. There were a lot of games kind of like that because we weren't that good, where like we were the team that was in our half defending the whole time, and yeah, like their center backs and it would usually be just four defenders would be camped out on our midfield line, and we just you couldn't. No one made a run, so you couldn't break the line really, and it's just frustrating because if you got the ball, you lost it really quick because you're under pressure, and if you tried to like clear it over top of the high line, there weren't really willing runners, and they're all sucked in to like defend the numbers on your half. So yeah, it kind of reminded me of that. And in the first half, we were that team. Our
Yes.
our our defense, our center backs were on the halfway line. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Berhalter's got to get the first half. We need to play like that like the whole game. And if we come out like that against England, it's going to be bad.
I think so too. I mean, one thing we didn't necessarily see in this game that I was worried about going into this was necessarily Anthony Robinson and Serginho Dest defending 1v1s. You think of Wales didn't necessarily do that with Roberts and Nico Williams, but you think of Saka and Sterling, sizing people on
Mm,
1v1. That
yeah.
that can be an issue just by itself. Um,
Yeah, and then even the subs, like if he puts in Foden or Rashford, it's just like y- you can't do anything because you can't be like, hey, I'm gonna shut down Saka, and then they'll take him out, and someone worse will come in because it's like, no, someone just as good as Saka with just as much pace is gonna be coming in. So yeah, you can't. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be really hard.
and to touch on to piggyback on what you said when you mentioned how you were commenting on how it was different, how we were all of a sudden we weren't winning those 50-50 duels. We weren't Wales were actually the ones turning us over, where in the first half it was the opposite. And it was pretty much because the back line, those center backs were basically with the midfield. So they were like Ethan Ampadu and Rundon, Ben Davies and whatever, they were all kind of in the same area. And so it was actually pretty easy for them because they had bigger size than necessarily
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. True.
And that wouldn't have
Yeah,
happened.
and more in the midfield too.
That was only able to happen because we weren't able to push them back. Just a
Mhm.
simple run over the top would have been able to force that difference.
Yeah.
Because when you play with back three and you have wing backs further up, what that basically means is you've got space on the corners for a ball over the top, and
Mhm.
we weren't trying it. Um,
No.
so
Yeah, we didn't even try it at all. And
no,
then Pulisic and Sargent are dropping deep, and so
unfortunately,
there's not really like a target guy up there either.
yep.
And I mean, I guess they're dropping deep because they want to get on the ball and they're not really touching it. But then it's like the Kane thing, like I said. Then you're too deep and you don't have a target guy to pass to,
See,
and
that's
so
why normally sometimes Kane doesn't work because he does that. He'll
mhm.
do that, and
Yeah.
sometimes there's only Son making that run, and he's got no one.
Mhm.
That's the reason why they need a Kulishevsky. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
You can drop deep, and that's fine, but Bale was basically doing this too. You've got to
Mhm.
have someone in front of you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
and so I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, for Wales' chances, it is kind of interesting because coming into this, I think before their Nations League form, people maybe would have been a little bit more high on them. Um,
Mhm.
but in that Nations League group where they lost every game and were relegated, quote unquote, they were playing Belgium and uh,
Yeah.
uh, it was Belgium and it might have been Holland.
I think it was Holland,
Like
yeah.
four of those games,
I think they drew Holland
four of those
at
losses or
least.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple of them were just only like a goal, losing
Yeah,
by a goal. So
1-0.
maybe even late goals. And so
Yeah.
uh, I think getting a point is respectable, to be honest. And it just sucked the way it happened. But
Yeah. Yeah, I
listening,
think if we were the team that were down and we got the draw from the jaws of defeat, then we would be happy. But since we're the ones that had the goal, should have saw it out, it does kind of feel like a loss.
yeah. hmm And one final, we mentioned Ethan Ampadu a little bit, but I do want to highlight him again because this is a player that's actually on loan right now for Spezia at Chelsea. And you think of how he's young, he's 20, 21. But you think of how they've been Chelsea's been struggling at that position. I wonder if they could recall him in January, to be honest. But
Maybe.
4 for 6
Yeah.
for ground duels, 5 for 7 or in for those long balls, and just it seemed he was trying to show himself anytime, and anytime he did get the ball. He wasn't necessarily, going long, just like lose it. He was
Mhm.
collecting himself and finding the right pass to advance the ball forward,
Crazy
which
that
was
he's
helpful too.
that young. I feel like he's been around for a while. Then he played at Sheffield
Sheffield, I
in the
think so.
Premier League, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
And now he's at what Bournemouth, I think.
Spezia,
Or is it far? Oh, it's Spezia. Okay, okay,
Spezia.
gotcha. So he's in Serie A now. Okay. Yeah, I mean he's got experience, and I can't believe he's that young. He's because I feel like I've been seeing him play for a while now, like at least like 4 years. I feel like.
Well, he might be older. Um,
Oh,
but
okay. Let me look. I got to get to the bottom of
oh no. Uh,
it.
but
Oh, okay.
basically
He was born in 2000.
on the same end. It's not too bad. On
Yeah,
the
so he's
same
22.
end, our Anthony was Tyler Adams, and I don't know where we would have been like without him, because again, because our front players weren't doing any kind of defensive work, that was forcing the wide player or the midfielders to go wide to kind of at least do that, and that was basically even Tyler Adams to himself, and he was fantastic in his 1v1s.
Yeah, he was
I think it
amazing.
was like 8 for 12 in duels. He could have been. He could have been absolutely manhandled, and he wasn't. And he was cutting out so many passes. He was limiting transitions. He was just everywhere you needed him to be. And again, I, he was. I think Berhalter made a bunch of messy decisions. I think in the lead up to
Mhm.
this. One thing I'm not going to question is him making him captain. Tyler Adams
Yeah,
was
that was
fantastic.
brilliant.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was definitely because I think Pulisic was captain for a while before,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago or
Mhm.
whatever. So yeah, I mean, that was a great decision. You kind of, I guess he's, kind of saw everything in training, and for Leeds and was like, yeah, this guy is our captain, not Pulisic, and that was a great decision.
And so we'll kind of end a little bit on this. I mean, what are your thoughts so far of the competition of the World Cup?
It's been good. I mean, though I wish it was a little later. I don't like the 5 a.m. games, obviously.
Well, that was new to
Um,
me. I was like,
yeah,
whoa.
but I mean, also, I'm not used to 4 games on one day in a World Cup. Isn't it usually like 2 games?
I
But
thought
they did add teams. They
thought it
added
was
more
maybe
teams,
two
so
or
that's
three.
2 or 3. Yeah,
But
but they
another
added
thing
more teams,
too
I
is
guess.
I thought usually usually it literally lasts a month. I'm pretty sure from the
Hmm.
first game to the actual final. And this one,
Hmm.
I think the final was on the 7th of December. So it's a quick World Cup.
Well, no, it's the 18th, I think, of December, isn't it?
Oh well,
Or the
then.
20th?
Oh, you're right. Never mind. Oh,
18th. It's the 18th. It's
you're
the
right
18th.
because
So it isn't a month. It's like 2 days short of a month.
the next day Liverpool plays Man City. You're right. So never mind. Just we'll edit that out, or maybe not.
It's still shorter than a month. So
I
and
mean,
it usually
what do
is
you think of the
a
different
little longer.
of the new stoppage time? Because
Oh
personally,
God,
I'm
dude.
kind of a fan. But this has kind of been
Yeah.
some people have kind of been melting down over this a little bit. But
Yeah. So I guess if for the listener that doesn't know, they are really strict now in this tournament about keeping stoppage time. So like anytime the ball goes out of play, refs are adding time, and they're really trying to stick to adding all the minutes, all the seconds, even that the ball is not in play. And I got this funny stat in because this took me a while to find because I was like, this got to be a record in the World Cup for stoppage time. So the 4 single halves on Monday had the most stoppage time on record, and they've been keeping track of stoppage time since 1966. But in a single World Cup match, the most stoppage time for 4 halves was all on Monday. England in the first half, 14 minutes stoppage time. Obviously, the Iranian keeper got hurt, and then in the second half, 13 minutes of stoppage time, which is a shit ton, and it's almost half a game. And then the USA game, second half, we had 10 minutes and a little bit more, and then in the Senegal Netherlands game, we had 10 minutes at the end of the second half. So it's a record. It is a record for stoppage time.
mhm.
I don't know. I mean, some of it seems a little excessive, and then others, like the Iranian goalkeeper, they were tending him to him for like definitely at least 14 minutes. So I was fine with that. But then I don't know. It just seems I don't know. Also, that they don't keep the clock like running, so the players don't know
See,
necessarily like what minute they're in. And then they're keeping stoppage time on the stoppage time too.
so I think it's either Arsene Wenger or it's Thierry Henry who actually has gone public about this. It might be Wenger. Wenger's got a lot of like ideas to change the game. He wants like
Yes.
a World Cup every 2 years. But he said that there should be the clock should stop when a ball goes out of bounds.
Mm.
So there wouldn't be
Mm.
stoppage time, just the clock would stop.
Yeah.
Because there's been some talks basically saying like 30% of the game isn't played, or 30% of the game is part of like just stoppages and delays.
Yeah. The ball isn't actually in play.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically though what they're doing in this tournament is like they're when the ball goes out of play, like a ref is starting his clock
Yeah.
and until it goes into play, stopping it, and then they're adding it all. So they're basically doing it anyway. But yeah, then at least the players could like know how much time is because like if you played 5 minutes of stoppage time and you're playing 14 minutes, I mean that's a lot. That's a lot, and we don't like I don't think they just put 90 on the clock, right? They don't put the stoppage time minutes that they've played, so they
No.
might not know, right?
No, it's great. I was watching it was in the Tunisia Denmark game,
Denmark.
where basically the ref wanted to stop the play to like look at a VAR review, and this took like 2 minutes, and this is basically there was only supposed to be like 5 minutes of stoppage time, and this was basically in like the fifth minute.
Mm.
And so basically after that, Tunisia thought basically the game was over, and so anytime they got the ball, they were just giving it away to Denmark, and Denmark had basically two or three, maybe even four chances to recycle possession and to to get some kind of like look, and
Yeah.
because it was just fun. Like no one knew how long the game was, but at the same time,
Mhm.
one team was benefiting from that, and the other team was just like basically booted away, and we've won the game. And the ref was like, nope,
Yeah.
that.
Nope, you still got another minute, so the other team can retrieve that ball. Yeah, I mean that's what's up. Maybe I don't know if the ref is maybe telling the players, hey, 5 minutes in, we got 5 more minutes. Hopefully he is, but because if not, they don't really know. Maybe there's a coach keeping track of it and shouting it to or something. But
I
yeah,
think it,
that's a good point, Ben.
I think it's
Really good
great
point.
because it changes how these teams are going about it towards the end. Now, if they know if they like you said if they knew it was going to be 5 more minutes or whatever when they were doing this nonsense, maybe they try to keep the ball. But if they're going to be reckless
Mhm.
with possession, allow that other team to benefit. I applaud that. I think it's made the remaining games a little bit more attack minded. Sometimes we kind of see like
Yeah.
stoppage time, just maybe someone tries to like fake an injury. That's been another thing
Mhm.
too. There's been a lot of people going down where the play is continued, where
Yeah.
sometimes that's been a problem with like some head injuries.
Except for the USA game, that was weird. Where at first he was blowing everything dead when it was not head injuries, and then
Yeah,
at the end USA went down and he kept playing, which is weird. I had some gripes about the too for the USA game, but we'll focus more on the players, not the refs. But yeah, I didn't. Well, I don't know. Did you like the refs? Did you like the refing?
um, it was in that USA game. It was different. Yeah, I know there was kind of a. I know there was some gripes about the yellow cards handed out.
Yeah, some were early
I
for
feel
like first tackles.
I feel like they were relatively. There wasn't one where I was like, of a sure that was a completely overreaction. I was like, that's a pretty bad challenge. Okay,
Mm,
I understand that kind of
yeah.
thing. Um, I can't really recall if I was necessarily upset at the ref. He let him play for the most part. I thought so.
Hmm.
I mean
Yeah.
that benefited the more aggressive side, and we just weren't that. So,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that's
That's
why
true.
U.S. fans were upset about that. One thing I do
Yeah.
want to say is it's been a tournament for young stars. We
Hmm.
mentioned Cody Gappo on this little podcast, and he scored. He was the difference maker for Holland. Jude Bellingham, we've talked a ton. He got
Yeah.
the all important first goal for England and a great header. And Saka I think is like 21, 22, and he
Hmm.
got his goal. And I think Way is maybe in that same edge, and so
Yeah.
already
USA is very
a
young.
young World Cup. So that's good to see.
Yeah. And you kind of will it'll be interesting to see how the youth does because Argentina today is played a slightly older squad too, and they lost. So maybe youth pays in these cups. Maybe not though. Maybe the inexperience shows up. So that's just another like little wrinkle to look after in the World Cup. There's a lot of things like that that if you think about, you're like, I wonder, is this a tournament for the youth players or will older experience come into play? You never know really till the group stage is over about, and then you really start to figure things out a little bit. So
I just
it's
think
exciting.
I think it's a tournament for having legs, and so many
Mm,
guys have had brutal campaigns. So does a team maybe get lucky where they don't necessarily have a ton of guys in Europe right now? Someone like
mhm.
Canada maybe benefits from this. Um,
Yeah, maybe.
you, that's kind of talking two sides of my mouth because you think of like the U.S. and MLS, but and that didn't really work out for us. But speaking of Argentina, I mean, I'll ask you two more questions, then we could bounce. So, does this change your mind? This result change your mind on maybe your Argentina projection or prediction? And then two, do you think we'll see maybe another upset before this little match week is over?
Yeah, I think we will, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe an Asian team, maybe like Japan
Hmm.
or South Korea potentially, or it could be maybe an African team. I thought maybe Senegal had a chance, maybe, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think they're definitely going to be more upsets. But I mean, we played Saudi Arabia, and like you said, they didn't play that way. So maybe some of these teams did hold some things back and are throwing these things that the coaches hadn't seen on film.
Yeah,
So like that's just
I've learned to
it's another
completely
thing.
discount friendlies after
Hmm.
after that.
Yeah,
Um,
because you're right. Like that Saudi Arabia team was completely different, or maybe they were like, "Hey, let's go and put on a show and see what happens." And then, we don't really have to sit back all the time. Let's go attack.
It was also weird, like in that friendly, it was weird too because I think it was like an empty stadium. It
Yeah,
was a weird environment.
weird.
So there
Yeah,
was
it
just
was
none
very
of
much like a
com-
preseason game or something. Yeah.
completely opposite with what they were playing with
Hmm.
today. So that maybe kind of factored in as well. Um, I think it would be very fitting. I'm not necessarily going to call it, but I'll be lame. I think it'd be funny and fitting that so many, the Messi, Ronaldo, they have like fans and they go to war versus each other,
Hmm.
and they were having fun with Messi today. Portugal and
Mhm.
Ghana is not going to be. I don't think that's going to be a gimme for Portugal. So
Mhm.
I would maybe look at that one, and that would be
I
kind of
was
funny
honestly,
if both of them lose in the first
yeah,
match week.
that would be fun. I was honestly kind of surprised at the FIFA ranking for Ghana. They're like in the 50s.
Hmm.
I thought they were a little higher than that. I mean, I know they have like Thomas Partey. Do they have
They have Kamani and
Iheanacho?
Sumala. They have no Ian Nacho's Nigerian.
Oh,
They
Nigerian.
have Sumala. They have Lamptey. I think they moved him over.
Oh, Lamptey. Yeah, they have Lamptey.
Did they have Mohamed Salisu of
I think they do. Yeah,
So what
I think so.
Ghana did like something weird where they basically did like free agents over the last like year or two, where they were able to get bunch of like dual nationals to join them. Um,
Yeah, that's smart.
but it's possible they
Like,
weren't necessarily they haven't all been together at once. So who
yeah.
knows? Maybe that works. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I kind of hope we see an African team upset and get into the round of 16,
I mean,
or an Asian team, or a Arabian Peninsula team, something like that
I mean, I think
would be
of
cool.
Alfonso Davies versus if Belgium play with like Ouderweld and Vertonghen in the back line, and so they don't even have. I don't even think they play with like fullbacks anymore. There's no way he's not going to be able to get behind them, or like Tajon Buchanan as well. I'd be interested to see if Canada can finally, put something on
Jonathan
Concacaf.
David.
Yeah,
I honestly think I have Canada finishing second in the group to Belgium and
ooh,
moving on. And they got Jonathan David. Yeah, and yeah, I mean Davies is in the lineup as a striker. He's not even in there as a fullback. So that pace is going to be on display. And I mean they got some good players. They destroyed us in the World Cup qualifying. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of rooting for Canada to put on a show too.
they were so direct. It was like, what the hell?
Mm.
We were not able
What's
to,
that cold?
we were not able
That
to handle
cold
that at
Canada
all.
game, but gosh, yeah. Well, at least at the very least, we're getting experience in the World Cup, which is important. But
Sure.
yeah, it would be. We got to make it out of the group.
I mean, with 20, you think of how you normally there was such a thing as home field advantage. With 20, we got a little time here. With 2026, I want to say around the corner, but essentially, um, what would you prefer? Like, if would you prefer us bombing out here if it meant no more Brawlhalter guaranteed, or do you think it's worth it to risk where we somehow advance, we maybe draw someone and get draw something in the first knockout round, get to the round of 16, but that increases the chances of keeping Berhalter again. I mean,
Yeah.
what would you prefer?
I mean, I'd prefer us to get knocked out in this cup and then go far in the USA Cup because it's
Yeah,
in America. But there's something like since we're the co-host nation, we don't have to go through qualifiers, right? We're automatically qualifying, so
hmm
it's like less games to play and less games to like get used to each other, right? So
we can
I don't
schedule a
I don't
bunch of
know.
like friendlies, which
Bunch of friendlies,
I guess we'll do. But
yeah,
yeah,
because that's what Qatar did. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. But I think I don't know. I don't. If we make it out of the round of 16 or make it into the round of 16, we play Netherlands, and then we'd probably lose. And I don't know if Berhalter would be like our coach for 4 more years. I just don't. I don't think he's. I mean, he's not bad, but he's not that great. I don't know. I just don't. Even if we made it out into the round of 16, I don't think he'd be around in 4 years
if
for
it,
for the USA
I
Cup.
think if we got a result versus England, there would be enough people, at least on certain media. Well, we will not necessarily say names. That would try to be like, he got the youngest squad. He was the youngest. Remember, it was the youngest squad. All the way through, and got them through to this level. The farthest we've ever been, maybe. Give him another chance. I could see that.
Yeah, I just feel like in 4 years, like 4 more years, something we'd go on a losing streak
Yeah.
or something, and they'd fire him. But with no qualifying, maybe not, because like usually the coach gets fired when it's like a bad start in qualifying, and you wouldn't really have that. So I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's a
It's,
good question, Ben.
it's just scary because I think of after watching today, I'm starting to think more that your manager needs to be at the same level as these players. Now, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wasn't necessarily high on France this season or this tournament because of Deschamps, even though they won it with him last, they're the holders. Um, but just watching how Saudi Arabia's manager was able to out tactics basically Argentina and be able to just make those changes when you need it. I'm worried because I don't think we necessarily have that in Berhalter. Now, to be fair to
Yeah,
him, I will say he's done a very good job of recruiting, getting dual national guys to pick us. Like we wouldn't have Musa
yeah,
if not for him. He was able
yeah.
to get Pepe, even though for some reason that relationship kind of bombed. And he's done that with a number of guys, which we've definitely benefited from. Um,
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, that was a good call.
so
So they would definitely say that though. They'd be like, "Look, oh, look what he did with the youngest squad," which is a good point. But I don't. I mean, he's just not flexible enough for me.
yeah, it's
Like with
just
with this decision making on players, formations, it just seems kind of rigid. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just like continuity and stability. I don't know.
and
I'm kind of torn.
every time I try to give him the benefit of the doubt, I just getting bit.
Bit in the ass. Yeah,
I keep
yeah.
going back to it's so not just Pepe but PFOC as well. I mean, if you're going to go into a game where you attempt 30 crosses, I think PFOC is like
Yeah.
6'3".
I mean,
And
if you like, do you remember the hype around the strikers like last summer? Because it was like PFOC, Hoppy, Pepe,
Pepe,
Sargent. Like it was a bunch of guys DK that we were all excited about, and now it's like we have none. And we got all excited, or maybe we do, but we didn't bring them on the team on the plane.
and during that, everything you said there was during the Gold Cup. Basically, when we had and in between, there was one season where we had a Gold Cup and the Nations League, basically back to back, and we
Yeah.
had basically a team for the Nations League that we won, and then we beat Mexico with like our B team or C
Mhm.
team, and that kind of like, oh, Berhalter was like, oh, we've got all this depth now. What's funny is that one player that was never part of any of that was Jesus Ferreira.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're right.
that is frustrating. Well, we
MLS.
it's not too bad. We didn't do 2 hours. We did spend a lot of time talking about a one game, but why not?
Big game. Yeah, big game.
So Rex, do you have any final thoughts?
No, man. I'm excited about all the games, and I feel like when we come to the end of the group stage, it's gonna be like I'm gonna be let down because we're 4 games every day is awesome. So, but yeah, I mean, just we gotta enjoy it. We're doing we're doing a bracket, so we'll see how that works.
Oh no,
Um,
it's already bad.
yeah, but we did well, I did one bracket for ESPN, but it's not even the group stage. It literally just starts at the round of 16. So there's that. Like, find that, Ben, and do that if you have ESPN app. That's fun. The fantasy app.
Yeah, I wanted
You
to
could do
pick.
that.
I wanted to pick one where you picked every game.
Me too.
I was
Yeah.
disappointed about that, and I know there was like a fantasy one where you could actually do like fantasy, a fantasy team, like a draft team.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
I didn't want to. Nah,
That's pretty tough.
that
Yeah.
never works out either.
Because I'd put like Lua as the striker, and I think he missed a PK today.
Ooh, I would have doubled down on Kane. I think Kane got like an assist, but
Got 2 assists, didn't he? Yeah, at
two
least one.
two assists. England scores 6,
Yeah.
not Kane getting one. That would have floored me a little
That's
bit.
bizarre. Even the announcer said that, but they said that when it was like 4-0, and they're like, "How bizarre."
But yeah, I'll kind of echo those thoughts. I'll say, I guess wish you and Katie a happy Thanksgiving.
You too, my man.
Friday is going to be fun. I'm glad it's not the 5 a.m. game. I'll put it that way because that's going to be hard to wake up
Yeah,
after all that
2
turkey.
o'clock is gonna. Oh yeah, it'd be brutal. And I think it's supposed to be raining here, at least in Virginia. So it's kind of the perfect day to just sit around and watch a bunch of soccer games.
And normally it's a pretty good day for college football too. That'll be a fun day. Um,
There's a shit ton. Yeah, this whole week is going to be like because Thanksgiving Day there's going to be 4 soccer games and what 3 football games. So it's going to be crazy.
out of nowhere, all of them, like the Detroit Lions, are like kind of interesting now. But I think I'll be watching the football, or the I think I'll be watching the World Cup.
Football, the original football. Yeah, me too.
The
I think I
football.
will. I think that'll just be on all day. I'm not even going to watch the Thanksgiving parade. Don't care. We're going to put on the soccer game.
We're gonna put on the football. All right, man. Well, I guess that's it. We want to thank Jeremy for joining us again. It sounded hopeful that maybe he'll be able to join us again, possibly
Yeah,
for another recap. And if it's
we might get
anything,
Alex,
if
but
it's anything like
he's
this,
going to West Virginia, so he's busy. But
hmm,
maybe we can get Alex one day for a little bit.
hmm,
So bring the team back together.
if it do get back to the back four, Jeremy will have to take over hosting duty because it's hard enough for me to think of questions to ask you, uh, questions to ask him to try to.
Three people.
That is that's a little different. But anyways, kind of closing down. I think that's it. So for
Yeah.
all of us at the reserve squad, you stay squatty.
Stay squatty, folks. Thanks for listening.